Hey everyone, Michael with Quiet Lawn here. I was watching YouTube this morning and I saw a great video from Mike Andes, who is a very smart guy, much smarter than me, very big business, very successful business. But he was talking about contracts versus pay per service in your business. Do you have your customers on a contract where they have a set monthly price? Or are you pricing per visit, and per service for what you offer? I wanted to give my input because we've gone from one to the other over the last couple of years, and I wanted to talk about our experience and some of the pros and some of the cons. We used to do pay per service from the beginning. A few years in, we decided to switch to contracts or really service agreements. Which are not quite the same thing, but they're very similar. So let's talk about the pros of contracts. One of the pros that we found to offering contracts and the reasons that we decided to start doing that, it makes it easier to upsell additional services. It makes it easier to sell your services in general because you aren't having as much sticker shock because you're dividing their cost of their services over the whole year as opposed to paying for each service. So, they might be paying $40 per mow, but you might be able to get it to them for $60 per month because you're dividing that up over all the months in the year, even the months that you're not actually servicing the property. So we found it easier to upsell additional items with contracts. A lot of our things, like when we have our fertilization and weed control program, we might have upsells like year-round fire ant control. And if they were to pay for that up front, it might be $100, $150. But we can put it in their contract and say, hey, for $12, $13 a month more, you can have year-round ant control. So it makes things like that a little bit easier to sell, especially if you have a client base like we do that is 95% retirees and they're on fixed incomes. They like having a consistent payment every month that they know it's going to be, instead of hey, during the summer you're paying $300 a month for this and then during the winter you're paying nothing. So that's one of the big pros to contracts and the reason we went to it. You do get a more consistent cash flow. So instead of having all your revenue come in during 6 or 7 months of the year, it's more spread out. So, it's a little bit easier during the winter. Now, it's really the same amount of money either way. You're still charging the same for the services, but it just helps you with a little bit of built-in discipline. For those of us that aren't that great at setting back the money we need to get through the winter. You tend to get longer term clients, lifetime value of that customer. You don't typically get people that sign up and cancel after 1 or 2 visits and stuff like that you get doing pay per service. You tend to get people that are going to stay with you for at least for 1 year. And anything like that brings down your cost of acquisition for that customer. Over the more revenue you can get from that customer over the lifetime of them, the cheaper the acquisition cost of that customer becomes. One of the great things is everything's in writing. There's no, what is included in the service, your policies, how it's supposed to be paid. What happens if it's not paid? All that stuff's in writing, so there's no questions, which is really nice. Hey, this is what it includes. This is how you're going to pay. This is, everything is right there. There's no room for confusion, which we all know happens a lot when there's misunderstandings or miscommunications. You typically get less cancellation of services, and this was one of the big reasons that we went to contracts. So, the mowing season, especially in our area with the grass types we have and the cooler climate for those warm season grass types, you get several times a year that people will want to skip mowings, like during the early spring or the fall, and even sometimes when it's dry in the middle of the summer. When we did pay per service, you get people all the time that would want to say, hey, just skip it and we'll do it again, come back in another 2 weeks or whatever. And that just kills your revenue for mowing for the year. And you go from where you're maybe mowing their property 18 or 20 times a year on a bi-weekly basis, and maybe you're only getting 14 or 15 because they're canceling, a few of those services. So one of the biggest reasons we did this is to get that consistency, and so that we could put that in writing. Hey, your service includes 18 bi-weekly mowing visits per year. This is what's included, and this is what the cost is. So there's no question, and it has a cancellation policy. If you can't, it doesn't matter if you cancel, you're still paying for the service. It's already included. One of the cool things that we figured out when we kind of experimented with this with a few customers before implementing it full time was that before, when customers are paying per service, like over there, and they're paying, say $40 a week for you to cut their grass, if the grass hasn't grown a lot, or if it's dry or whatnot, they are more likely to call you because they're saying, hey, I'm going to have to spend $40 if this guy comes and cuts the grass, and I don't really think it needs it, whether it does or not. What we found when we put people on contracts was the opposite happened, and this was kind of what we were hoping, is that, they see in their contract, hey, I paid for 18 visits. I don't care, I want to get what I paid for. It's already, I've already paid for it and I want to get it. So we would find that even, in those cases where the customer's yards hadn't grown significantly between visits, they were still messaging us to ask, hey, are you guys coming? Because in their mind, it's already paid for, as opposed to pay per service where they're going to have to pay for it. They might think that they don't need it. So we were able to get less cancellations on our service of individual services and visits with the contracts, which was a big goal because, like I said, it really kills your cash flow, and your revenue when you're cutting out 20% of your visits during an already short season. And one of the biggest benefits long term is, you're building a much more valuable company when you have contracts. Our types of businesses don't sell for a lot of money. They typically don't sell for even, 1 year of revenue. It's hard to sell our type businesses, and most of that is because when people are buying your business, they're just buying your client list, basically. And that client list, if you don't have contracts, they don't have any loyalty to that new buyer. That if I have Michael Reed's Lawn Care and I sell my 100 clients to another company, there's nothing stopping those 100 clients or 90 of them from going and finding somebody else day one. And that person that's bought my company has very little of value that they paid for, and that's why you don't get a lot of money for it. But if you have contracts in writing, that is already a guaranteed revenue stream that potential buyer is buying, and it can make your company much, 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 much more valuable. And you can get, in some cases, many times your annual revenue or annual earnings, in a situation like that. So, that's kind of also a reason that we were looking at is long term. But like I said, the biggest benefit was just more consistency with our services and our offerings, and just having everything in writing so that our customers understand when they sign up, this is what's included, this is our policies, this is what it's going to cost, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot less confusion, because as I've told you guys before, 95% of your problems with customers become from poor communication, where they don't understand, they think something is supposed to happen that's not included or whatnot. So the more you can communicate all that stuff, and you can let people know what to expect, realistic expectations, the less issues you're going to have like that. So, there are a bunch of cons to go into contracts, and we found out one of them the hard way last year when we implemented this. So what we did last year which was the first year that we implemented contracts, is we did just 12-month contracts. So it was a full calendar year. So if you signed up in May, your contract ended the next May. with the nature of our business, most people, the vast majority of your customers, probably 75% plus, are going to sign up in the spring. March, April, May. They're going to sign up right when all of the work is starting. So what happened is we signed up all these people during that time and put them on 12-month contracts and divided that cost of all of their services for last spring, for the last summer year over the next 12 months. And what was happening is we were going through a negative cash flow cycle during the whole summer last year. So, it might be costing us $100 a month in labor and materials and cost to service their property, but maybe we're only collecting like 70 or 80 of that at the same time. Now we get it back in the winter, but that doesn't help you in the summer when you're, having to pull $5, $10, $15,000 out of savings just to make payroll through the summer. And that's kind of the situation that we got into last summer. Is that it kind of flips your negative cash flow times. When you're doing pay-per service, the slow times of the year are the times when you're not bringing any revenue in the winter, during the off season. With contracts, it kind of flips that, and the summer is when you almost need a summer fund instead of a winter fund when you do contracts, the way we did them. Now, the adjustment we made this year, which has made all the difference, is instead of doing a full 12-month calendar year contract cycle, we switched to, or a full 12-month cycle, we switched to just finishing out the rest of the year. So if they sign up now in May, their contract is only until the end of the year. So, the remaining 6 or 7 months, that's what's in the contract and that's what they're paying for. And then we do all of our renewals in January. Like I said, if you watched our previous video about revenue, I said, I told you in that, I think we did, I don't remember, $276,000 in revenue last year. But I told you that we actually lost money, on paper last year. And part of that was because in actuality, we completed about $310,000 worth of work, but we still had about $30,000 or $40,000 that in accounts receivable for those remaining contract payments through the spring, which we've since then collected. But that was part of what put us, negative last year as far as profit. But like I said, adjusting that to where our contracts follow the calendar year from from January 1st to December 31st. Is eliminating a lot of that, and it's made cash flow much better as far as that. But there's still going to be those slow times in the summer, and this year we know what to expect, so we're able to plan for it. We're able to put a lot more money back for our summer fund. We're able to put a lot of money from project work, like mulch projects, stuff like that. We're able to put that back to help float those negative cash flow times of the year. Another con is that you're locked into underbid work longer. So, if you underbid, the thing with contracts is you need to have a pretty good idea and be pretty good at estimating. You need to know your cost, like we talked about in other videos, know what your cost per hour to operate is. But you need to be pretty good at estimating, because it's one thing to mow somebody's yard for $40 and it costs you $50 one time. But to mow their yard for a whole year and lose, $10 each time, that's a whole nother thing. So it makes you more locked into work that you underbid. That with a pay-per service type setup, you could just say, hey, we cut it this time. We thought it was going to take this long. It took this long. Your future visits will be this much money, and would you like to continue? Now, we don't really have that issue, because one thing is we do service agreements, which are actually different than contracts. Service agreements, are not as, contracts in writing. A service agreement is just more a handshake in writing. So in our service agreements, we have 30-day cancellation policy. So the customer can cancel with 30 days notice, or we can cancel with 30 days notice. So if we sign somebody up and we underbid their work and their property took longer than expected, we will just tell them, hey, we're going to cancel, and your price needs to be raised to this. If you don't want to pay that after this 30 days, then we will cancel our service agreement. So that's another downside to contracts. There's more chance to get burned. With paper service, especially if you're doing like we did and you have a credit card on file, which is what we require of everybody. If you're still taking cash and checks and things like that, I highly recommend you get away from that. But with paper service, if we're doing their service this week and we mow their grass this week, we were billing everybody and charging their card the following Monday. And some people even do that the same day, every day of the week, which is great, because the faster you can get your cash in, the more of a positive cash flow cycle you have, the healthier your business is going to be. But with contracts, they might get 2 or 3 services from you that they haven't paid for, and you're not going to find out until you go to collect their next month's payment. So there's more chances of people trying to burn you for bad debt, especially in the case like what we did last year, where we had people that signed up last May. They paid us through the whole year, until December, and then they sold their house and moved, and they still owed us for 3 or 4 months. In their mind, they're like, hey, you're not servicing my property anymore. Why am I still paying you? Not knowing that they're paying for what the work that you already did. So while we were lucky, we only had like one person burn us for a couple $100. That would have never happened with paper service with a credit card on file. So you do open yourself up for more potential to have bad debt. So let's look at paper service, how we used to operate. And some of the pros is you always have a positive cash flow cycle, like I said. If we're doing the work this week, we're collecting for it at the beginning of next week, and we're not having to pay our expenses for that service until after we've already gotten paid. So it's not like, we're having to pay our labor, we're having to, pay all the payroll expenses and all this stuff, and then wait for 2, 3, 4 weeks to get our money. We already have our money before we pay our expenses, and that's great. And that's a great, positive cash flow is a huge thing in a business, and cash in a business is everything. There are less barriers in the sales process when you have paper service. You end up closing a lot more customers, because there is a certain percentage of people that do not want to get locked into a contract or a service agreement. They just want to do paper service. So you're typically going to have a higher conversion rate and less barriers to get somebody through your sales process just because of that. Also, you're adding an extra step in the process, of having to get them to sign a contract. So the more steps that you put in the sales process, the more people that are going to fall out somewhere in that process. The goal is to move somebody as easily and quickly as possible from a prospect or a lead to a customer. Now, I'll ask Ibrahim if he can make a video. We started using an awesome software that we discovered this year called HoneyBook. It's not specific to the green industry, but it's very cool because it allows you to send a very cool estimate that has pictures. It's easy to read. It allows customers to select what they want. They can select basic mowing they can select add-ons. They can add everything they want to add, and then they can go ahead and e-sign their contract and add their payment on file and make their first payment. They can do all that in 2 steps. You got to send them the estimate. They approve what they want, and then you send them the contract and their payment information. So it greatly streamlined our sales process, and it's really upped our closing percentage, and made that process a lot easier. But it's called HoneyBook, and it's really cool. The other pros to paper service is that you can immediately adjust pricing. So if I price your lawn at $50 and we got there and it was supposed to be a $60 lawn, I can immediately say, hey, Mr. Smith, this is what we thought it would take, but unfortunately it took longer. So, we're going to have to adjust your price to what it should be. We're going to have to adjust it to 60. Would you like to continue, or, would you like to cancel services? So very cool about that. One more note on that. The other cool things about contracts is that we all know that it takes typically takes a good bit longer to do the first mowing visit for a customer. The edging takes longer. Every part of it takes longer. With contracts and things, we can build in things like automatic surcharges for the first visit and divide that throughout the life of the contract. So on our mowing visits, we build in like a 50% surcharge on the first visit. So if their regular price is $50, that first visit is going to be $75 to help cover just in case we get there and the edging hasn't been done in 2 years and the grass is tall or whatnot. We've already got that surcharge built in. And of course, if it's even more than that, we can go back to it. We have it in writing saying, hey, if it takes longer than this, then there will be additional charges. There's a much smaller chance of having bad debt and not collecting. Customers might be able to burn you for one mowing service. Say you cut their grass this week and then you go to bill their card on Monday and it doesn't go through. Our policy was as soon as your payment fails, or doesn't go through, your service is frozen. So you might get one mowing service from us, but we're not going to be cutting your grass for, like I have in the past before, when we operated the old-fashioned way with checks, where you might be cutting Granny's yard for 3 months during the summer without collecting a check and then not get any of it. So worst case with paper service, if you do it right, you might only get burnt for one visit. The cons to paper service and why we switched to contracts. You get more service cancellations. So, we all know that we have a certain window with our businesses to operate. We have a certain set mowing season, and we want to fill that schedule with customers that are going to complete the whole program during that time. And it kills you to fill your schedule with customers that try to cancel, 10 or 20% of their visits because, they think it doesn't need it, and we all know how people are and how different that can be. Some guys, some people, their yard could be 8 inches tall and they don't think it needs it. And some people, want you to cut their grass if it's grown a ½ inch. So you just open up the door for a lot more stuff like that, which ends up hurting your revenue during the season. So you just have more chance for stuff like that because it's not in writing and because it hasn't been agreed upon from the beginning of the season what's going to happen. No winter cash flow, really. So as we said, probably the total revenue you're going to get throughout the year is going to be about the same. Now, like I said, it's easier to upsell and you price slightly higher because you're offering the convenience of a consistent monthly payment. But in general, the amount coming in for the year is going to be the same. It's just, if you're not disciplined and good at managing your money, it's going to be more of a struggle in the winter. The other con is there's going to be more sticker shock when customers see your estimates, and it's going to make upsells harder. Like I said, instead of seeing, hey, $80 a month for biweekly mowing, they're going to see, oh, it's $55 per visit, or grub control. If you want to add grub control to your treatment, that's going to be $75 or whatever it is, instead of, oh, this is an extra $6 or $7 a month. Do you want to add this in? That's a much easier sale with a contract than it is with paper service. Longer term, I think it makes a less valuable company to do paper service because anybody buying and we're not talking about huge company. That's a different thing. Like Mike Andy's, what he's in, that comes with a whole deal. Comes with a whole management team. Comes with all the systems, all the structure. I'm referring to smaller businesses like us, under $1 million, or even into the low millions. But I think you're a less valuable company if you do paper service because basically people are just buying your client list and knowing that there is no loyalty from your customers, and that they're going to lose a large amount of them. So I think having contracts in place, definitely, makes your company much more valuable. But that's my opinions. I'm no expert by any means. I just wanted to share my feedback, having operated both ways. Sometimes I wish we still did paper service? Sure, it would help us grow faster. It would help our cash flow more, have a more positive cash flow cycle. But I remember all the frustrations of, having people cancel services, or expecting something was going to be part of a mowing visit or part of a service when it's not included. Some people have crazy ideas that, you're supposed to spray all my mulch beds or pull weeds when you mow. Like, they just, people have all kinds of assumptions of stuff that's included in a service that might not be included in that service. It's definitely eliminated a lot of those headaches. It's made our schedule more consistent, because it's not like you can just tell your employees during the middle of the summer, like, oh, hey, Mrs. Smith doesn't want her grass cut, just take the week off. Or a bunch of customers, they just said they don't want their grass cut. This has to be a mutually beneficial transaction with you and your customer. It's not just, hey, I'll call you when I need you. You keep your guys, you buy all this equipment, you pay all this overhead, you keep your guys waiting on me, and when I need them, have them come here. It doesn't work like that. This needs to be beneficial for all of us. And if our customers want consistency and dependability from us, we need the same in return from them. So that's one of the biggest things I like. Like I said, the learning curve with learning when the negative cash flow is going to be, adjusting our contracts, like I said, when they run to, it helps with that. But overall, I'm happy with our decision. Is that to say that we might do this for a couple years and say, hey, the cons outweigh the pros and we switch back to paper service? Maybe, but like I said, I am happy that we switched to service agreements at this time. But please leave any comments, any questions below. I hope that helps, and hope you're all doing well. Have a great day.